Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with a little bit of Point Blank for you all. And this is one that I obviously did a boot camp series covering the whole thing. And something kind of funny about me, thanks to that whole brain injury, getting blown up, bull crap. I did the boot camp series, but I still don't remember the rules worth the damn. So I do a video and the brain just like data dumps everything. But I do remember the majority of it. I've gone over the rules and got it all back in my head, ready to go. But the key thing that I'm wanting to do here is not really go over the game. I've already done that. I've got the boot camp stuff up so you guys can see all the rules. What I'm really wanting to do here is more of show what the solitaire system is, because you guys haven't really seen that from me before. So when it comes to this game, there's a bunch of player aids that come with it. And by the way, when you get the game, you'll know what box the thing's coming in, because it's heavy as a brick. There's so many damn cards in it. You definitely get your money's worth, I'll give you that. But some of the player aids are just the solitaire components. That's what all of these are here. Green being defensive, red being aggressive. We'll touch on that here in just a minute. Now, what I've done is I've laid out kind of a little starter scenario here. I've got the maps kind of folded in. That's why you still see creases on them, because I'm not showing everything. But we're only going to concern ourselves with 2 to 2. Okay, so B, C, and D up each side, so 0 and then over to 2 in each side. So it's 15 total sectors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 3 rows of that. Okay, that's all we're worrying about. And the neat part about this is you do have the ability to create your own matches. There is a buttload of scenarios that do come with this game. It talks about the module rules here and the scenarios. But if we look in here, I mean, just all the scenarios you could ever want, plus even campaign rules, plenty of that. But in the beginning of it, it does talk about doing some create your own type stuff, and how that comes into play. Focus on my card here. Is if you look right there, that red number, just turn sideways so you can see it easier. 12, that's how many points this card costs. And each card has one of those. So what I did is I gave 50 points for each side. I think the Americans are just under it. Let's see, was that 36 for those guys? I was thinking they were 10. Are they 12? Yeah, they are 12. And I gave them an M8, which is 18. So yeah, that should be, oh shit, that is a little, I think I'm just above 50 on the Americans. Oh well, they'll live. And the Germans got a couple of SS. Those guys are a little bit better. They're 17 points apiece. And then I also gave them an armored car. So you can see the ordnance stuff down here. Both of them kind of have an armored car that has some ordnance and a little machine gun to use the, I have no idea what this would be called, but armored car. And again, my purpose of doing this video is not to show you the game being played per se. It's to show you how you're going to use the solitaire system when it comes to the game. So basically how you're going to get your orders, how everything's going to work when you're doing that stuff. Basically what I chose was meeting A here, gave me a little point structure, and then how everything gets set up. I've already got the units on the board. But one of the things that we have to do is that we do draw terrain cards, not for every sector, which is, you know, the rectangle spaces on the board, but just for the ones that are going to have units in. And there are rules that come into place, which are in the core rule book. All the solitaire stuff is spoken about. Let me let you guys know here. At the back, starts on page 89 of the rule book. So solo rules here. This is in your main rule book. Starts on 87, excuse me. So make sure you eyeball all of this before you get into the game, but this is what we're going over here. And it does talk about when you're doing your little setup, that when you're drawing for your terrain cards for the AO or the AEO, which is the artificial enemy opponent, if I remember that right. I'm just going to call it the AI. You'll draw your 2 terrain cards, and then you're going to pick the one that has a defensive bonus for them. Now, you get the same choice when you're doing yours. You got your little terrain cards here. You get to draw 2, pick one. Let's do that real quick. Start with this SS squad. 2 cards. So one is a hill, one is clear. So it's going to start with a hill as their terrain because they want something that has a defensive bonus. So we'll plop that in there. And drawn again for this guy. They can be outside the wooden building. Yeah, we'll give them the wooden building. Defensive 3. Throw that down. And I'm going to shuffle the ones that weren't selected into the others. We got a road or clear. I guess it doesn't matter. Both are 0. So one there in the very far back is going to get a road. And we're going to draw the same for my guys. We'll start at the bottom, work our way up. And I don't really like marshes because those are a negative. So my guy's getting a clear. That's not good. And armored vehicle. Come on, give me something good. Clear, clear. We're gonna get raffle stomped. What a joke. All right. They're getting all the good terrain. Good or brush. We'll put the brush here. It gives a little degrading terrain, which is actually good because our line of sight here, both of these armored vehicles are facing each other and they are within range easily of each other. So at least this is some degrading terrain. Help mess up some of their shots coming in, but mess up my shots going out. Sure. Draw for our last guy up there, and I've got a stone building or a road. Obviously, we're going to go with a stone building. That's some of the highest defense there at 4, so he's going to be really well protected against that SS squad above him. Now, remember, when it comes to this game, your units always have to be in a sector that has terrain in it. So that's why we're drawing here, there at the start of it. Since we're just doing a free-for-all, we don't have any other terrain that's going to go on the board. If you're doing a scenario, it will tell you if you do or not. And again, I'm sorry about the creases here. I did try to fold these down as best as I could, but because I'm using a small section, I couldn't lay it out perfectly flat. I will say the matte material, though, this is different from what they've used previously for their paper mats, the cardstock. This is different. It's got kind of a, I don't know, like a glossy feel to it. It almost feels like it's easier to fold. I don't know. You guys have to let me know. It feels like that same type thickness, but almost more flexible is a way to kind of describe it. It is hard to describe, but it is different from the ones that you find in like World at War 85 or Lock and Load Tactical. All right, so when we're getting into this, we're ready to start our game. You're wondering, okay, how does it work? Because each side is going to draw a hand of cards, right? So for me, I would draw. All right, sorry, I got distracted there for a sec. But I've got to draw a hand of cards, and you're wondering, okay, well, how's that going to work with them? We've got our action card deck. Remember, that is what controls the flow of our game, okay? Everything that we do is going to be done from this action card deck. We're going to operate our units. We're going to do everything that we would normally do in the play of the game, same way with the cards that we have in our hand. AI isn't going to operate that way. Now, 2d6 are included in this game, and that you normally don't need because with our action cards, just to randomly pull up one, remember, they're going to focus in. They're going to have that dice symbol, and you're still going to draw these cards. Now, you can roll, but you have to discard cards to account for that if you want to roll. It's doubling what you're doing. You really shouldn't do it. You have to draw cards for your D6 checks, 2d6 checks during this game. That's how it's operated. Remember, go check out the boot camp videos, but that controls the flow of the turns by burning out this deck. The AI does operate differently, though, because they're going to be running on a 2d6 on a player aid. So let me draw my first 5 cards here real quick. Let me scoop up part of the deck. 1, and I'm hoping I shuffle these up. These are brand new, but I'm probably going to have some duplicates in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got my first hand of 5. I'll set that off to the side. Now, on top of this, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and stop. Just 4 cards, not 5, because at the beginning of each one of their impulses, they're going to discard a card. So to account for the fact that they're not getting a hand of cards, I discard those right off the bat. This is only done at the start of a scenario, though. This kind of represents the AI's hand and keeps you even with the way that the deck should be burning out. So, boom, we're going to take and drop those off to the side. We've got our first discard. Now, remember, these action cards have a whole lot of symbols on them, just in case you need a reminder. Boom, right here, all the symbols, what they mean, what they do, all that other good stuff, the stuff that you're going to find on these cards, the action cards, all that good stuff. Oh, and this is a nice inclusion here. The terrain card, there is a default terrain card deck that is in your scenario booklet, but they do have that listed here as well, because you're not going to start off with all the terrain cards in the terrain card deck. All right, so taking a look here at the phase of the game, we don't have to worry about anything for this upkeep phase since we're just starting off here right now. So we're going into the impulse phase. Make things easy, we're going to say that the AI, the Germans there, have the initiative. They're going to start off and they're going to conduct play. So how do they do this? Now this is where these 2d6 come in and one of the AI player aids, because the enemy can't have a hand of cards, okay? There's really no way to solitaire that. So the way they came up with to do this is a 2d6 roll, and this is actually kind of neat. I gotta give it to them. This is a way to expand that out to all the other different options. Now, let me say this very specifically here while we're talking about it. During this segment of the game, when you are doing a roll for the enemy, you do not use the action cards. All right, that action card deck, you will roll your 2d6 for you. Boom, toss it down, go from there. We got a 7 here, okay? The reason is this does not have to do with the flow of the game. If you try to draw cards for this, you'll burn out your action deck too fast. So remember, this is the only time you're going to roll dice and not draw the cards out. So what I want to do here is an example. Here we go. We got a 2 and a 5. So let's look and see what we're going to do. We're going to say that our enemy is an aggressive stance. If you are playing a scenario, though, it does tell you. Let me flip to a scenario real quick. Say this one here, solitaire play posture. British are going to be offensive, German will be defensive. It'll say that for each one of these scenarios in the booklet. Doesn't matter what side you want to play on, which one you want to AI out. You just use whatever flowchart is applicable to the side that you have as the AI. So if you're playing British, the Germans would be using the defensive, the green parts on the player aids. So again, playing like this, we're just trying to kill each other. No objectives to worry about. We can say they're aggressive and they just want to kill. For them, we're going to look. We got a 2 and a 5 pip, and you see it actually references this. So let me get my light out of it. This isn't just we rolled a 7, because there's actually 3 different 7s on here. Now, some of them are rare, like doing the 2. If you actually snake eye it, it's just flat out a sniper action, and it doesn't matter. But it is going to be determined by the posture that the AI's in. So if they're in defensive posture, you're going to look what number you rolled and what pips you used to roll that number. And then you're going to look at what posture they're in. So we got a 2 and a 5 pip, and we've got melee or overrun as our order. Now that's not actually going to work for us because we don't have anyone in, I think, melee or overrun range. So it'll probably just turn into a move order. Now, be aware as I'm flipping through this that this does get a little fiddly as you're first starting it out. It's going to take a little bit of playing with these player aids and going back and forth to kind of get it underneath you. But after you've played a game or two, it's going to flow. You'll understand what the AI is doing. All right. For us, not every single action is going to be on this player aid. Like sniper action isn't going to be there because you don't have to. It's pretty basic. But something like this, right, it will be listed down. Melee overrun, cover action, ready action, and then some actions are going to be color dependent depending on if it's defensive or aggressive. So a defensive move action is listed out here. But for us, as an example, we got our melee overrun. Yes, we got that. Is there an enemy unit adjacent to a player unit? No. All right. If there was, we'd continue down here and do whatever it says. Since there isn't, we are going to do a unit spend or a discard action. Now, I'm going to say this again because I think I might have forgot to mention it again, but I want to make sure I reiterate this. This was the beginning of the AI's impulse phase. So since it was, we do discard a card from our action deck. All right. So the top card is going to be taken off, thrown into our discard pile to signify the fact that they are playing that card. We're doing the unit spend or discard. And again, there's another flowchart. And I know this looks cumbersome because it kind of is a little bit, but again, you're going to get the hang of it after you flow through it. Very similar to the lock and load tactical solitaire system that I have used before. So if you have used that, you're going to kind of fall into this pretty easy. So are we doing a unit spend or discard action? Yes, we are. So we're on this. Is the order referred from another flowchart? Yes, it is. Spend selected enemy from the previous chart. Since we didn't get one, we would just select randomly on which one of these guys it is. We can just roll, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to be dummy there in the back. And is the enemy unit shaken? No. Have the assault icon? I believe he does, because they're SS guys. They should have it. Let me eyeball it real quick. Okay, so for us, we're going to look. Does he have the assault icon? Yes, he does. Assault is, remember, moving and firing. So he does have it. He's going to move towards the PU, which is the player unit. And right here, if you look, it says fire if assault icon only. So you fire at the closest player unit with firepower before ordnance. So what all that means is we would move this unit towards this guy. Now, unfortunately, he's not going to be able to conduct his fire attack yet because he's not in range. He's only got a range of 2, which I'll show you here. So you see his firepower is 2. That little superscript there means 2. So he would have 2 hexes away. So if he's here, or I knew I was going to say hexes at some point during this. If he's here, he can go 1, 2 and shoot out to that distance. Actually, wait, he could shoot there. Yeah. He could hit dummy here. I'm not even paying attention to the fact that I got a unit right there. So he could do that. Yes, he will get to fire. We can do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our, and you guys bear with me because I am using a different camera now, which does have some ultra high def recording, but it takes it a second to focus in as it tries to look at everything I'm doing. Move and firing, or a fatigue. So since he's moving and firing, he's going to be getting some fatigue. So we're going to throw these on. Remember, we're going to point this in the direction that he's going. He's going that way. We'll resolve that terrain later, which again, you can figure out how all that's done by the bootcamp videos that I've already done. You can go reference all those for the specifics, but we're just showing you how this solitaire works. So he's going that way. He's got his little fatigue, and he's going to take a shot there. Since this is catty cornered, you check it by seeing if he's got clear. Yeah, we're good. We'll take a shot at him. All right, so just to quickly run down through the firing procedure real quick, and again, forgive me if I miss a modifier here or there, but there's a lot, so I might potentially miss one. Hopefully you guys bear with me. They're at the range of 2, but he is doing an assault, which is going to bring him down to, that's actually going to bring him to a firepower 0, but he can still conduct his attack. So they are going to have to apply that to our target here, and he's getting that defensive from the brush, a defensive bonus of 1. So that's what we're looking at. Defensive bonus here of 1 and a -2 being applied to the SS squad since they have a assault attack. All right, so looking at it, we've got our attack resolution here. Total attack firepower is going to be 0 plus any modifiers. Well, it's 2 minus their modifiers plus the 1d6 check. So we'll grab the top card off. I actually got a 5, not too bad. Now for defense, you're going to get your terrain modifier plus cover. They don't have any cover, but they are concealed. That's going to give them a 2 plus a 1d6. So 2, 1. So they're getting 3 plus 4, 7. So the defense wins. There's actually going to be no effect from that attack. And boom, just like that, we have completed our first round, first impulse rather, with the AI. All right, so just to cover a few other aspects when it comes to the Solitaire, remember, like I said, on this little 2d6 chart, which actually I gotta say, I like this. It makes it easy to figure out what they're doing, and it gives you that randomization that you need for Solitaire play. So I think this was a good move for them to go for. But there's not going to be a flow chart for every single order on here. Some things like the sniper we just talked about or cover aren't going to have a flow chart assigned to them, but they do have rules in the book that tell you how they're going to work. For example, doing a cover action is something that you can do during your opponent's turn. Well, the AI has the ability to gain these tokens, and these tokens represent their ability to have that card in their hand to do a cover action, which gets them a +2 bonus to their defense. And there are rules on when they're going to use that. So make sure you pay attention to those. But they can have up to 2 of these. So there's only 2 of these counters in the game, but the enemy can have a couple of these that can be played, and that represents them playing a card during your turn. Now, also, when it comes to the randomization of the enemy units, you saw earlier how I rolled off to determine which one of these sectors was going to receive the order, and it ended up being that one. Now, if you had more than one unit there, okay, so we just had one SS squad, didn't have to worry about it. Say you had more than one, though, you would do it in this order. You would start with, you would pick the armored fighting vehicle, then the infantry unit, then the weapon team. And that just has to do with a stack of units in a single sector. Okay. Again, if you've got multiple sectors that all meet the same requirements, whether it's not having fatigue or whatever it is for the order, then you'll pick based on that and then determine based on whatever sector. So roll to figure out your sector and then follow that little chart, armored fighting vehicle, infantry, or weapon team to figure out who's operating in that sector. Also, just like I have the ability during my turn to take and do a hand flush where I basically dump my hand to get a fresh hand of cards, the AI does have that ability as well. The only thing is to signify that, you'll just take and discard the top 4 cards of the action deck to represent the fact that the AI is flushing their hands. It keeps the flow of the game turn the same. So just to kind of reiterate what we covered, the game's going to play the absolute same for you. Nothing's going to change. During the upkeep phase, there is a flow chart on what the AI is going to do during that upkeep phase. Then when they're doing their impulses, you're going to roll off. And remember, when you do your roll, you're not discarding cards from the action deck. This is the only time you don't do that. Every other time you're discarding cards from the action deck for the flow of the game. But for this part, you don't. You get your order. Let's say we got a fire action as an example. You would pull up that flow chart telling you what action they're doing, and it's going to walk you through on which unit's going to do it and then what they're going to do as their action. A lot of times, depending if they're aggressive, defensive, if they're trying to get to an objective, they're going to look for that. They're going to be based off whether or not they can hit you at range, with like mortars, or if they have certain levels of fatigue. They're going to be looking for all those different factors as you walk through this flow chart. And like I said previously, make sure you keep in mind on which one you're doing. Are you doing a defensive AI or are you doing an aggressive AI? So like I'm showing you here, this is 2 different flow charts that are going to behave differently depending on whether or not you are aggressive or defensive. Remember, defensive is the green, and it's going to be easy to tells you right there at the top. So this is the move action for defensive. This is the move action for an offensive. I keep calling it aggressive, but offensive. So for us, if we were doing a move action with our Germans here, we would be using this chart to determine who, what, when, and where. Like I was saying, I know it seems a little fiddly at first. You've got a handful of flow charts that you got to work with, but think of it this way. The flow charts just exist to tell you what action and who's doing it and who they're doing it to. That's it. The only other thing that you need to keep track of is making sure to do those discards whenever you're doing your impulse with the AI to make sure that the action deck remains with the same amount of cards that it's supposed to have as if it were a heads up game. Other than that, you're still going to do everything else the same when it comes to firing, when it comes to doing ordnance, when it comes to doing your moves. Everything else of the game is going to operate the same when it comes to the solitaire. You just use those flowcharts to determine those specific things. Anyway, I hope this demonstration helps you out a little bit when it comes to point blank and the solitaire and how everything works with the game. If you like Lock and Load Tactical and you want to try a card game version of it, this is it. I know like they kind of kept giving me crap over that. It's not Lock and Load Tactical on card. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's very similar. A lot of the rules are close, but there are differences, especially when it comes to like ordnance. Ordnance is a fair bit different than how it's handled in Lock and Load Tactical, but things like the infantry firepower are very similar, when it comes to comparative roles and stuff like that. I will say though, the footprint is large. It can get very big depending on how far out you want to fold these maps out. Because remember, they can go, if I remember right, it's 5 sectors in each direction. So you've got your center and then 5 sectors that way, 5 sectors this way, and I think they go out 5 sectors in each direction. So you can have a huge card battle laid out across the board. You can, if you want to, play without it and just use counters to represent, because there are counters included in the game, B1, B2, that type stuff, so you can signify where they are if you have the ability to keep that on your head. If you're doing a smaller game like I've laid out here, yeah, you could do that relatively easily because you only have it going in a couple of sectors in each direction besides the middle ground. If you're doing a big game, though, yeah, I'd probably recommend having the map there. It's just going to make it so much easier. And I got to say, I think they kind of went with the right direction as far as the size, because we talked a lot about the size of these sectors during the prototyping of this game, but it looks like you can fit roughly about 3 cards across, and you just need the room. My prototype version had it to where you could only fit a couple of cards across, and it just wasn't big enough to get the cards that you needed there. So I like the fact that this is expanded a little bit. It's as high as a card and 3 cards wide. But it gives you enough space so it doesn't feel like it's all on top of each other. I know I'm talking about stuff besides the solitaire, but I'm just giving you some of my extra thoughts about the game. If you're new to the game, though, and you're just trying out that solitaire thing, do something like I've got here. Get a few basic units, just lay them out, and then just walk yourself through the charts, right? Go through it, roll the dice, pull the cards, run through the actions. That way you can kind of get a feel for the game and how it's going to roll before you really lay out the big version that you're trying to play. All right, that's going to be it for me for this one. I hope this helped you guys out. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them down below and I will try to answer them as best I can. You guys stay tuned. I've got some more and more Fearful Sacrifice coming up, as well as some stuff by Compass Games, some more stuff by Warlord Games, and Volca Simulations as well. All right, you guys take care, and I will see you in the next one.